Hello, everyone. This is Amena Bakr, Chief OPEC Correspondent from Energy Intelligence Group. I'm here in Riyadh at the FII conference, and I'm joined by Cornelia Meyer, the CEO of Meyer Group. She's an independent energy advisor. Cornelia, very nice to see you here in Riyadh. Let's talk a little bit about the theme of this conference, which is emerging. It's all about geopolitical risk. And almost every panel, we've been hearing about geopolitical risk, its impact on the economy. In terms of energy markets, specifically the oil price, what impact is this geopolitical risk factor?
Well, Amina, thank you very much for having me. It is important in terms of energy markets, this geopolitical risk, because every geopolitical risk puts a shock into the system, and traders tend to agree. We saw that when the issues started in the Eastern Mediterranean, the oil price temporarily shot up. It came down again because people realized that most of the Iranian oil, if there are more sanctions, goes to China, is refined in the teapots and the small refineries with no linkage to the international financial system. So that was fine. But let's think further. If this thing spreads and affects sea lanes, shipping lanes, then we might have a problem. So everybody's sitting a little bit on tenterhooks and says, oh my God, what does it mean for shipping lanes? What does it mean for more countries getting sanctioned? What does it mean for extra supply being taken out of the market at a time when demand is growing again? Let's not forget we are now basically beyond the demand that we were pre-COVID.
Absolutely. And this is something that the OPEC Plus group will have to consider at their next meeting. It's on the 26th of November. Given all these uncertainties that you've just laid out, what do you think the group will do in terms of policy?
Well, I think they will, at this point, they're holding on to what they're doing. But mercifully, they've been foreseeing some of the problems. Because on one hand, yes, we have the geopolitical risks, which are a threat to supplies, but we also have high interest rates. We have supply chain woes, which then are a threat to economic growth. So the group has to get that balance right. And so far, they have done extremely well. And I think especially, His Royal Highness Prince Abdulaziz bin Salman has been very good in cautioning and taking that extra million barrel voluntarily off the table. The upside is, if we really get in a problem, there is some spare capacity. But, let's not overestimate it. It's some spare capacity, and not all of the spare capacity can come on immediately. It takes time.
In terms of macro and fundamentals, Cornelia, where are you seeing demand in 2024? At Energy Intelligence, for example, we're seeing a growth of about 1 million barrels a day. Is that similar to your estimates?
Exactly similar to my estimate. It's now 101 million barrels a little bit, and I would say it may go up to 103 million barrels a day. But again, it depends on what is happening to the global economy. If we have too many shocks, be they geopolitical, be they interest rate, then that doesn't help growth. High interest rates, if you can't borrow, you're not growing that fast as a company.
Let's shift gears and talk a little bit about the transition, which again was a theme here at this conference. We're seeing Saudi Arabia and other countries invest more in cleaner energies. They want a mix of 50% gas and 50% renewable energy by 2030. In terms of the energy transition, do you think some countries are being left behind?
Well, I think where I have a problem with the energy transition, I would like to see a just and fair energy transition that takes the global south along. And I think Saudi Arabia and the UAE are doing a phenomenal job in really charting a course and having a long-term plan and saying, we're doing this much in renewables, we're doing this much in CCUS, and they're going along that way. But we have, in terms of the terminology, in terms of the edict, we have very much the global north, the 1 billion, telling the 7 billion what to do. And maybe it's feasible for the 1 billion to go everything on electric vehicle electrification. They have the wherewithal, they have the money. But the global south will need oil and gas. for some time to come. And especially when you look at, let's go to 2050. We have 2 billion people more in this world. Those 2 billion people will live in Africa and they will live in South Asia. They need affordable energy. And let us not forget, at this point, we have 700 million people in energy poverty. If we are not careful and give affordable energy to the many, we might have 2.5 billion people in energy poverty. That would be a quarter of the world's population. That cannot be. So we need to be realistic. And that's where I see also the carbon trading schemes, like the voluntary carbon trading scheme of Saudi Arabia that the Public Investment Fund started. I see that as a shining light of helping us being able to develop and still do the right thing.
Especially if that part of the world, if we're talking about Africa, they're the lowest in terms of emissions, if you look at overall emissions.
And look at Pakistan, 1% of emissions and the huge floods they had last year. It was, it's not acceptable.
So COP is coming up, Cornelia, in the UAE. What to you would present a positive outcome?
I would think a positive outcome, and we're on the right track. I think it's in very good hands with Dr. Sultan. And the thing is, we need to have everybody engaged. I think this is the first time that we'll see oil companies engaged again. And we see, we have to get away from that edict of the north to the south. We need the global south engaged, and we need people to talk with each other rather than at each other.